Thursday. Good morning, PSW staff, clients, friends joining us. We're revisiting one of my favorite people in LA. Just a real genius. Just a great, this was somebody not interested so much in advertising and making a bunch of money at all off LA, like Harry Chandler would. This guy was a complete, just bohemian revolutionary thinker that brought a lot of culture and, I don't know, great stuff. So let's get right into the life of Charles Lummis. So before Laurel Canyon was kind of an artist community, you know, in the 60s, long before this, Charles Lummis created an arts community in the late 19th century. So, I mean, 70 years or so before all of that kind of was hip to do. He was, what this house represented culturally was astounding. It really was. Lummis was an author and an activist, historian, photographer, librarian, and he dropped out of Harvard to do what? Well, to walk across country, to walk from Cincinnati to Los Angeles, and just wearing a pair of shoes. And a lot happened, and he chronicled his journey, and we'll look at some of that. And what his importance, which we'll look at, was to promote Los Angeles, but not promote it in a way that somebody like Harry Chandler would promote it with building the Hollywood sign for real estate, right? Because we looked at the Hollywood sign, it was just supposed to be temporarily there. He promoted the culture of what LA was, which was white people, right? No, it was indigenous people. They were the Tongva tribes. There were Indians. There were people here beforehand that he didn't disregard. He wanted to understand them. So he did a lot for Indian rights, for human rights, or indigenous rights. And we'll talk about a museum. So, I mean, already we're having too much fun. So Lummis was born in 1859, East Coast, Massachusetts, but he makes his home in Southwest. Dies in 1928, so sees a lot. I mean, the early development of Los Angeles. And the Lummis house is kind of Mount Washington today. That's where it is. So 200 East Avenue, right off the Arroyo Seco freeway, which we looked at in our Pasadena class, because that was the first freeway in the United States, right? And why do you think so? Why do you think that freeway goes like that? Because of the river, the Arroyo Seco, from the San Gabriel Mountains down to, you know, kind of close to downtown and all that stuff. So he builds it right kind of near it, because back in the day you needed to build close to water, right? Or, you know, it was smart to. So, but he starts building this. It takes about 12 or 13 years for him to finish building. Mostly does it all by himself too, with some help from local people, you know, local workers. And I mean, we'll kind of get into the house in a little bit, but it's pretty amazing. So he flunks out of Harvard and decides to just, instead of being on the farm, wants to come out to the west and southwest. So he was offered a job with the LA Times. So Los Angeles at that time had about 12,000 people, and he was like, okay, well, I'll make the 3,500 mile journey from Cincinnati to Los Angeles on foot. I mean, it's one thing to do a journey back then, you know, on a train and see a lot, but to see it on foot, think of what he saw. And he would document his and mail things to the newspaper, and he became a little celebrity in the papers for doing these kind of great things of walking, interacting. I mean, it really is how you get to know the land and know the people, most importantly, on the land. So you're coming together instead of just, okay, I'm here and kicking everyone off the land, and this is my land and I got it first. He wanted to understand what had been going on before. So it took about 143 days to walk, and he would chronicle this, and he loved the American Southwest and its Spanish and Native American inhabitants, and he published all of these things, all, you know, what he encountered, and then when he comes to LA, he's the first city editor for the Los Angeles Times. This is before Harry Chandler, and he needed a place to live. So what did he do? He built by hand out of stones from the river, from the Saco River, this 4,000 square foot home that took 13 years to build. And he really fought for a lot of Indian education, the education that the Indians were due. So this time the government, and he went to Harvard and was friends with Teddy Roosevelt, the president. So, I mean, he had some ties, but he created a lot of ruckus with government because mostly, the government wanted these Indian, if they were allowed to live, to act like white people, right? I mean, change their look, change their hair, or, their language and all of these things, giving up all this traditional. Where Lummis really said, we don't have to change this. This is a lot. This is, I think what they have going is interesting, and why would we have to do this? They weren't allowed, when they went to school, they weren't allowed to ever go home. He fought for them. Well, no, they can go home. They can get vacation. Some families are too poor to travel. So if you're sending, your kids off to school, and so, he persuaded the government to give them a lot of rights, that were kind of, they weren't given. So the landmark is a a craftsman style house. I mean, so it's on 3 acres, and around 1895 to, for the next 13 years to build. And it's an exhibit now today, so you can go and see it. What's really cool is that a lot of notable people would come through and come through his house, and he was very good at talking to people, at understanding their stories, where they were coming from. What happened was kind of these salons, where artists, musicians, scientists, writers come together. They come at the table, they have a meal, they have drinks, they think about, they philosophize things. He kind of, so his Friday evenings where he would cook, and it was the scene of noise. That's what it was called. So, and there were different scientists, musicians, artists, and they would share things. They would sign in his guest book, and they would host these evenings, like a salon, where it would be stories or singing and dancing and conversation. And this is how we get art, right? I mean, I was thinking how this ties into music, and it's like when I talk about people, musicians, composers, and they learn music in their house as a kid. If you didn't have record players, which they didn't back then, how do you learn music? You learn it from people coming to your house and playing the guitar and teaching you a song, right? That's how you learn it. So what he wanted to do was not eradicate all of this music, whether it's Mexican music or folk music. He wanted to embrace this. So when you're an early, kid or person wanting to sing something, you go outside and you say, hey, can you teach me to sing? And maybe that person is an Indian. Maybe that person is, and they pass on part of their culture. So while he's doing all this, he's taking thousands of photographs. He's documenting so much of early LA history that people have yet to document. Maybe they don't think it's important. I mean, other cultures. He starts putting all these things together. In 1907, they opened the museum downtown, but then 1914, they move it to Mount Washington, and they open the Southwest Museum. This is the oldest museum in Los Angeles. How cool is that? So 1914, beautiful building, less than a mile from Lummis's house. So the museum's still open now. It's owned by the Autry Museum, the Western Museum near the zoo. And what he opened was mostly things that he had gathered from his walking trip, from all over, artifacts, things in LA. And today it has a whole bunch. The collection is pre-Hispanic, Spanish colonial, Western American art and artifacts and all of these cool things. So because of Lummis, this museum's still there, and this house is still there. So it's a cultural monument and national historic, one of the historic places in Los Angeles. Really cool. Charles Lummis. I just my mom mentioned him on the radio, some story, and I looked into it. So thank you. This was really cool. And again, promoting not real estate, not something material, but promoting cultures. That's what he did, promoting what was already here before and using that and not getting rid of it, not ignoring it, incorporating that. And that's part of why our city is so great, because there's so many different ideas and things going on. You get different ideas from different kind of people, and that's what I love about being here. You know, I mean, we're not the only place, but we're the best place. So I hope you enjoyed that. He promoted culture in LA. And again, not like Harry Chandler or people wanting to make money with the Hollywood sign. Harry Chandler built more. He was great, you know, in terms of promoting LA, but he promoted the original culture that was here, the Tongva people, and did fought for a lot of Indian rights, and then built that home. It took 13 years for him to build that home, and then it was very cool how they did all the salon parties on Friday nights, artists, writers that would come over. So just a massive talent. I love that his house is still there in the Southwest, you know, the first in LA, the first museum in LA. There's tons of stuff. So I hope you enjoyed Charles Lummis, a real heroic figure. And that's it. Okay, tomorrow we see your film scoring results for Westworld. Can't wait to show you that. Have a great rest of the day. See you tomorrow. Bye.